Hi, my name is Bruce with the Weeder's Digest, and our job is to help you understand how to manage the weeds, the muck, and the algae, and some of those other nuisance things around your shoreline. That's what we do, that's what we want to help you with. So, let's walk through a couple different things. Whether it's weeds, or muck, or algae, we're going to walk through some brief examples. We can just give a very brief solution in just 2 to 3 minutes here. But if you're going to deal with weeds, you've got solutions of raking them, cutting them, suppressing them, or using a herbicide. Now, we're anti-herbicide because we think we can do it much more environmentally friendly without the use of herbicide. So let's talk about some solutions. One would be that you just rake them. And this is a very manual way to do it, but this is a 36-inch wide rake. Comes with a float. It's nothing special. It's just a noodle. That way you can skim things off from the surface. And it has a 11-foot handle, which you can actually buy extensions up to 22 feet. So that is one way to go out there and just literally rake the bottom. And when you rake the bottom, you will impact the vegetation and the nutrients that are causing that vegetation to grow. But one of the things that's important is to understand what kind of a vegetation we're dealing with. Because when you get into, let's say, lily pads, for example, nice, looks pretty sometimes, but they can have roots as big as that. I'd say on average they're about that size, but they can get that big. So then that's where we've got some other implements called our lily pad ripper. But it can be done. The other option is you can get a little more raking done deeper down in with what we call our big tooth rake. It has a much longer tooth. It has a chamber that you can fill full of pea gravel so that it weighs heavier and sinks down to the bottom. So those are a couple of different options for managing the weeds from a raking standpoint, and you can also manage the muck on the bottom. A lot of times people have a bigger issue with the muck on their bottom than they do with the weeds. Now, the most common in the product that we have literally shipped all around the world is called the weed shear. Weed shears are basically, these are underneath these blade covers. It's a 4-foot wide razor blade, and that's no exaggeration. These are literally stainless steel razor blades. And because of the space requirements and the fact that we're not outside today, it's kind of hard to show you, but you basically throw the weed shear out and it sinks to the bottom. When it gets to the bottom, you jig it back to you, and then it literally cuts all of the weeds, and I mean all the weeds, not just some of the weeds. All the weeds will be cut off at the base. And so that is probably your best bet for just managing the weeds. Obviously, you're not impacting the root at all, but you're doing a great job of getting rid of the weeds. And what you want to make sure you do is make sure you don't have any fragmentation. So the weed shear, along with the long reach rake, using the long reach rake with that long extension on it and the float on top, you can skim it off, make sure it's not floating around, because a number of different plants, such as milfoil, which you probably are very familiar with the term, can fragment, float away, show up at your neighbors, create another field over there of new vegetation. So you want to avoid that. I should also say that the weed shear comes with a 9-foot long handle, which also allows you to reach underneath the dock and clean those things up. But you want to stay on top of that. Now, the other option is to what we call suppress, and that's usually using a bottom benthic barrier, and there's a lot of different terms for that, but it's a screening material. We have 2 different types. One is basically what we call our lake blanket, and the other one is called our screening material. But they both cover the bottom, and that's not allowed in all states, and is not encouraged in some, and then there's other states that really like it because you're not using anything negative. But it can't just be a tarp, because the gases will come up from underneath it. Methane gas will fill, if you had a tarp, cause it to float, lift off someplace else, get into props, all those kind of things. So it is a special material that we actually have put together there. Now, another option for cutting, and I just couldn't bring it in here, it's just off the side of the camera here, but we've got a 4-foot wide boat-mounted cutter. And so it's 12-volt, connects to your battery of your boat. Hook it on the transom, or hook it on the side or the gunnel, or even up on the front of a pontoon, and just drive and cut a 4-foot path all the way down to the bottom. So those are different solutions for managing the weeds. You can cut them with our aquatic mower. You can cut them with our weed shear. you can rake them, you can suppress them, and we don't use the herbicide word. Now, another thing that will manage your weeds and actually manage the bottom is what we call the lake groomer. The lake groomer is an automated system. It's kind of the granddaddy of all, and you can have up to a 42-foot wide arm rolling across the bottom. So it's connected down here, the motor's up here, and then it's a tube that's rolling across the bottom of the lake very slowly, and as it does it, it uproots the weeds, it manages the bottom, it does some packing of the bottom, and it also stirs and cuts the weeds, and then will actually smooth out the bottom. That is kind of the ultimate. It's got a price tag to go with it, but it is incredibly effective to go that way. Now, that also manages the sediment or the muck on the bottom. Another option that we've got, and it's kind of hard to show it here because it's a multi-piece unit, but that's called our Aqua Thruster. The Aqua Thruster is basically a water mover, a water circulator, keeping the water moving around a dock. At my house, I've got a lot of vegetation that floats in. This manages that or keeps the algae from becoming stagnant or causing it actually to grow on the surface, which is a filamentous type of an algae. You have to be careful that you don't get that too close to the bottom because it actually can remove all the muck and the sediment and the sand if you're not careful. You can kind of dig holes in the bottom. We have that in a dock mount. We have it in a float. Got it over here off the side of the camera in a freestanding unit. We've got an oscillator that moves it. So we've got a variety of different options. That's called the Aqua Thruster. We've also got other options such as our muck pellets that are actually a organic type of environmental friendly, I should say, bacteria and enzyme. And because what I'd like you to just think about for a moment is that vegetation, or let's call them weeds, that settles to the bottom every year. Whether you cut them, rake them, or you just leave them, if you don't take them out, they're going to settle down to the bottom of the lake. And because they're organic matter, they're just going to turn into another layer of muck. And you might have inches, you might have feet. But when we use these different products, and I was just referring to the muck digester pellets, and the muck digester pellets actually go in with that bacteria and eat up, as long as it's organic, and most muck is organic, it'll actually eat that up. Now, it's not a fast process. It gets rid of probably 3 to 6 inches per year. So we've kind of gone through some different things, and again, this is a very, very quick tutorial about how to use some of these different products and different ideas. Now, if you're looking at property, for example, this is the best way, in my opinion, coming from the lakeweed guy. This is my opinion of how to dramatically either improve a property that you might have purchased, and because a lot of people buy a property and they didn't ever think of their due diligence of what's on the bottom of the lake until afterwards. Until, if you had to go to my case where I actually went out, a kid swam and said, "We're not going to swim here ever again, Dad. This is a bad idea." And so I had to be not proactive, I had to be reactive. But if you're looking at property right now, then I would encourage you to look at a property with a different mind's eye and not be freaked out as my kids were when they realized what kind of the lake bottom and how much weeds were in there because they didn't see it until June or July. But to actually look at a property and say, okay, it's got some issues and there is some muck and there are some weeds, but with the help of Weeder's Digest and the Lake and Pond Help Desk, that we could help you out. Again, in a very, very brief tutorial, thank you very much. I appreciate you taking a couple minutes to listen to this video. And if you'd like to get more information, all you got to do is give us a call or visit us at our website, which is the Lake and Pond Help Desk. Once again, it's Bruce with Weeder's Digest. Thank you for taking the time.